Hello and welcome to today's lesson on the nutrient cycle. As usual, please follow along with this video as if it was a real lesson. For some of you this may be a bit of revision, but please still complete the tasks as this is quite a tricky concept to understand. So as usual, we've got our 4 do now questions. Please write your title, your date in your exercise book or paper and your do now questions in full sentences. We'll be going through those answers in just a second. Okay, where is the equator and what degrees of latitude does it have? The equator is the line that runs through, or rather around the middle of the Earth, and it has 0 degrees latitude. Anything away from the equator is going higher and higher towards the poles in terms of degrees, but the equator is the 0 mark. Which tropic is closer to the North Pole? That is the Tropic of Cancer. What hazard does high air pressure cause? That would be drought. And an example of a push factor, obviously lots of different possible answers for this. I just came up with high crime rates, poor housing or few jobs. Essentially, any reason that's going to make someone want to leave an area is a push factor. Before we go on to the nutrient cycle, I want to talk about the water cycle, something you should remember from certainly the first topic of GCSE, but certainly as well from Key Stage 3 as well. So on the board we've got a picture or a diagram of the water cycle, and we've got 6 different processes. Just have a quick think, pause the video if you need to for a second, see which processes can you remember. So the first process we've got is water turning from a liquid into a gas, and that is evaporation. The second process is condensation, that is where the water turns back from a gas into a liquid, but still held in the air. Third is precipitation, often in the form of rain, but this can be snow, hail, mist, sleet, all the different forms of precipitation. Interception is the process where plants intercept or catch precipitation that's falling from the sky, and that slows it down. Eventually the water will usually run off those plants and into the ground. Once it reaches the ground, we'll have a process called infiltration, and infiltration is where the water travels into the actual ground. It penetrates through the soil. The final process, which appeared just a second ago in the middle, is transpiration, and this is where the water that's intercepted by plants actually can evaporate back off the plants and go back up into the atmosphere. So transpiration is also when water is released from plants. So these are all processes, these are ways in which water moves around the cycle. But there are times when water is not necessarily moving between states or between areas, and it can be stored. And there are several different stores in the water cycle, and this is where the water is not moving. We have groundwater. Groundwater flow is a process, but groundwater, just water in the ground beneath the surface, is a store. Rivers, lakes, ponds, and even the ocean are stores as well, and those are places where water is not changing state and often is not actually moving. If it's in a river, obviously yes, it is going to be moving, but if it's say in a pond or in the ground or in the ocean, it may not be moving physically, or may not be moving very much at least. So that's the water cycle. Today we're looking at the nutrient cycle. Nutrients are minerals that plants need to survive. Please add that to your notes now. Nutrients are minerals that plants need to survive. Okay, just like water, nutrients move around in a cycle, and there are various different processes and various different stores. There are 3 stores that we're going to find out about today. They are biomass, which are plants, litter, which is dead plants, and the soil itself. Again, if you can add those bits of information, keywords to your notes now, please. Okay, so what does this look like, the nutrient cycle? Well, let's have a look at this diagram here, and we're going to start with the tree's roots. This tree will take in minerals and other nutrients from the soil. Within the soil there are minerals and nutrients, and the tree will take those in. It will use them to grow. perhaps into its leaves. Those nutrients and minerals, just like the carbon cycle, will become a part of the leaves of the tree. Over time, those leaves will die. And when they die, they drop to the ground and they become part of the litter store. While the leaves were attached to the tree, they were in the biomass store. But when they're dying and they're on the ground, they are part of the litter store. Over time, the litter will decompose, it will rot away, and some of those minerals will go back into the soil. And then those minerals may be reabsorbed by the tree, and we begin to see how this cycle happens. But there are other ways in which nutrients are moving around the cycle. For example, in the actual sort of rocks there will be minerals, and when plants take those minerals in, they are moving the minerals too. When the rocks break down due to, say, rainfall or weathering, the minerals will be released, and so the minerals can move from the rocks into the actual sort of surface soil. That's still part of the soil store. If we have a look at this diagram, it's perhaps a little bit simpler to understand. So we've got our three stores. We've got soil, biomass, so plants, and litter, which is the dead plants. And we can see the three stores in those circles, and we can see these lines indicate the different processes or the ways in which the nutrients are moving. So often with this kind of diagram, it's actually drawn to scale. So looking at this, which is the largest store and which is the smallest store? So the largest store we've got is biomass because it's the biggest circle, and the smallest store is litter because that's the smallest circle on this diagram. What I would like you to do is to make a copy of this diagram of the nutrient cycle on the right hand side in your notes. It's a really important key process that we need to understand, and please make sure that you've added the title and a key. It may be easier to do this not on the YouTube video, depending on what your internet quality and your device is like. So if you need to come back to this task at the end, feel free to, just make sure you remember to do it. But please make a copy of the nutrient cycle. That should take you probably about 5 to 7 minutes. Once you've finished that, you can move on to the next bit of the video. So we've got two different biomes here. We've got the tropical rainforest and the taiga forest as well. Natural processes tend to happen in hotter environments. Just like you, when it's cold, you don't want to move around very much. The nutrients and don't want to do the same kind of things. Natural processes usually move and work quicker when it's hotter. There is a point at which that stops being true when organisms get so hot that they can't operate and they die, but generally speaking, the warmer it is, the faster nutrients will move. So nutrient cycling will happen very rapidly in the tropical rainforest, which is why there is very rapid growth of plants. Whereas in the more polar regions, because it's colder, nutrient cycling will happen much slower. And again, as a result, that is why there is much less growth in those areas. Okay, so what I would like you to do is to look at the resources that are on Show My Homework and complete the tasks as it says in the description. Once you've done that, you'll be ready to attempt today's quiz. Please remember to complete all of the tasks before doing the quiz so that you're really ready to answer those questions and show what you've learned. If you have any questions, please do let me know. And if you have any feedback on how these lessons are going, again, please do let me know. Thanks very much. Have a lovely rest of your day.